I don't know if I consider this series just a fun look at a game series or an honest need of catharsis. Okay, so before we actually get into the fun and all that stuff, I gotta get a little bit serious, so bear with me here. In all honesty here, I have had a very hard time trying to make some sort of commitment to these types of videos. Like, almost as if I get done writing it, and then immediately when I'm about to shoot, I just hit a fucking wall. And to be honest, this has been a problem for quite some time. I would say going back to when I was doing my old Last on the Bandwagon videos. So many videos have been scrapped due to that fact, and to be honest with you, I am really not happy with that. Trying to find a format and sticking with it has sort of been my chink in the armor, so to speak. I try something and I feel like I have to move away from it, and honestly, that kind of sucks in its own right. I feel like I could be doing so much better if I just stuck with the format and followed it through. So at this point, in order to break the cycle, I'm going to have to go back and make sense of a series that frankly built that wall for me. You know the one. The one that sent me to hell, but I'm going deeper. We're covering them all. Oh boy, we are in for a hell of a journey. Like, I've wanted to look at these games for a long time, like going back to the Earthbound video I did ages ago. Like, that's how long it was supposed to be, like right after that. But we're here now, and I think it's finally time for us to see why this game series became so fucking timeless. In order for us to do this, we need to understand the inner workings of the mind behind it all. Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk a little bit about Hideo Kojima. Hideo Kojima is a Japanese video game developer. He's responsible for game series such as Zone of the Enders, Policenauts, Snatcher, and of course the series we're discussing in these videos, Metal Gear. He is also batshit insane. Guys, simmer down, it's just jokes. I don't actually think Hideo Kojima is insane. But I will say he has had some outlandish ideas when it came to the games industry. My favorite being the idea that when making Snatcher, the game's floppy disk would be coated with a paint that carried the odor of blood. The heat from the computer would then cause the paint to melt, releasing what Kojima calls the stench of a murder scene. And this was in 1988, guys. Could you imagine what he would do with the Silent Hill franchise if he didn't get shit-canned by Konami? Now, one thing you need to know about Kojima is he is a massive movie buff. He eats and breathes cinema. Hell, most of his influences for video games, especially Metal Gear Solid, come from movies. From Solid Snake's iconic look resembling Kurt Russell's character in Escape from New York, to The Great Escape being the main influence of the original Metal Gear game on the MSX2. Hell, 2001: A Space Odyssey is Kojima's all-time favorite movie. Influences from the film can be seen throughout the Metal Gear series. Trust me when I say you could totally get a movie collection going from this dude. He has great taste in film. It's actually quite impressive. I've always said if Hideo Kojima wasn't making games, he would be an amazing filmmaker. But with the story that he told in the Metal Gear Solid series, I don't even think you could make a movie like this. The guy who made Kong Skull Island, one of my favorite movies of 2017, he said he was going to try an all-or-nothing approach when it came to the Metal Gear Solid movie. I really don't have faith that he's going to be able to do this. So I think you guys know enough about Kojima that I could at least get into the first installment of the series, aptly named Metal Gear Solid. I'm just going to warn you now, though, that the story is something I have a hard time trying to keep track of, because while it may just be a PlayStation 1 game, Hideo Kojima crammed so much shit into this that I really could not give you a nutshell version of the plotline. But I sure as shit can try! In Metal Gear Solid, you take on the role of Solid Snake, a relatively young, retired soldier from an elite government team known as Foxhound. Now you may be asking why you are coming out of retirement, so to speak. Well, a nuclear waste disposal facility on Shadow Moses Island in Alaska's Fox Archipelago has been taken over in a raid by next-generation special forces being led by several renegade members of Foxhound, as they threaten to launch a nuclear strike if the United States doesn't give in to their demands. Their demands, of course, being the remains of the Big Boss, whose genes were used to create these genome soldiers. At the head of this revolution are 6 renegade members of Foxhound, led by codename Liquid Snake with his officers Revolver Ocelot, Psycho Mantis, Sniper Wolf, Vulcan Raven, and Decoy Octopus. The Pentagon sends in Solid Snake, supported by his old commander Colonel Roy Campbell. Snake is given 2 primary missions: to rescue both DARPA Chief Donald Anderson and Arms Tech President Kenneth Baker, who are being held as hostages, and to find out if they have the ability to launch a nuke, and stop them if they do. Soon after infiltrating the base, Solid Snake discovers that the nuclear nuclear warhead storage facility is only a cover-up for a deep underground base used for the development of a nuclear launch-capable walking battle tank called Metal Gear. Knowing this, he ultimately sets out to destroy Foxhound and Metal Gear. As he carries this out, he finds that he has been double-crossed by his support and pursued by a crazed former ally and enemy. Friend and foe are indistinguishable as he discovers the reality of his mission, the terrorist plot, and the story behind the mysterious resemblance between Solid Snake and Liquid Snake. So was it good for you? Because it's been like 3 years since I've been trying to get this shit out, and oh my god, it feels so good. So the hardest thing when talking about the story of Metal Gear is, well, talking about the story of Metal Gear Solid, because there's only so much I can say without spoiling it for you guys. But what I can say about the story of Metal Gear Solid is it's captivating. It's a deep story with many twists and turns. And when I say turns, I mean it takes hard left turns. It's a game about tactical espionage action. You gotta expect a few double crosses along the way. Now, normally a game that dishes out so many plot wrinkles that if it were anyone else other than Kojima, you would find this game to be so fucking ridiculous. But what he did to remedy that is he wrote what I would argue some of the best video game villains on the PlayStation 1. The team leading this renegade Foxhound unit completely anchors the plot and strangely keeps it grounded enough to make you go, oh yeah, that seems reasonable. I'd actually argue that Hideo Kojima's strongest attributes when it comes to the Metal Gear Solid story is character development. Shadow Moses is just filled with a fascinating array of characters, all of which have their own charm to them, all of which is memorable as the next, whether it be a floating psychic man in a gas mask who reads your memory cards, or a master gunfighter who dons the greatest handgun ever made.
The Colt's single-action army. 6 bullets, more than enough to kill anything that moves.
Revolver Ocelot is literally my favorite character in this game, and as you will find out as we dive further down this rabbit hole, he is one of the most important characters in the series. He steers the events of the plot in the right direction through proper manipulation and cold-blooded confidence. Oh, and gun twirling. For as much as he's known for his manipulative tactics, my dude knows how to twirl guns in spectacular fashion.
Special Operations Foxhound. Revolver Ocelot. I've been waiting for you, Solid Snake.
But for real, he's my favorite. Metal Gear Solid unfolds through a series of what feels like never-ending cutscenes intermixed with audio dialogue via Snake's codec, which, for the PlayStation 1, it was something very different. It felt more cinematic of an experience, if anything. Most people will, of course, complain that there was an improper balance of gameplay and cutscene, but I think, honestly, the use of the codec kind of makes up for it. A lot of really cool moments that are integral to the plot of Metal Gear Solid 1 actually happen through codec, and I think the disconnect of finding out via audio dialogue makes it much more intense. You have no idea how hard it is for me to not spoil you on this game, but like, what Hideo did with a game that's about stopping a band of genetically advanced renegade soldiers absolutely blew me away. The only issue I really took away from Metal Gear Solid 1 was about halfway through the game in one of the many hard left turns the story takes with you. The rest of the dialogue is basically one big anti-nuke, anti-war message peppered in with lots of "how could I involve myself in such an evil scheme" speeches, which comes off as very preachy. And when shit gets preachy, I have a tendency to disassociate with what I'm doing, and I really don't want to do that with this series. But I will say at least the story has a tendency to twist and turn enough to keep my attention. Overall, however, the story of Metal Gear Solid absolutely knocks it out of the park. Hideo Kojima was able to write complex characters while simultaneously building a world through the environment of Shadow Moses. It's definitely one of the most memorable stories in quite a long time. So the most important thing you need to know about Metal Gear Solid's gameplay, if you were really just getting into this game, is that it's really a game about stealth. Now I know that it's like obvious as hell to say that a game with tactical espionage action is going to have some form of stealth gameplay in it. That's almost like saying Overwatch may or may not have some first-person shooter online action to it. From the moment you surface from the brisk waters of Alaska, your mission is to infiltrate as quietly but as quickly as possible using any form of defense at your disposal. Hell, right off the bat you learn that all you have on you is a pack of cigarettes, your codec, and your wits about you. As someone who's played a ton of games, none of them being from the Metal Gear Solid series, I feel as if the controls in MGS1 are pretty damn clunky. But it's really due to the fact that these are PlayStation 1 controls. Clunky ass, slow ass, 4-directional buttons that you need to make 8 directions ass PS1 controls. But yet, I can say it's one of those things I can look past easily because of the times. However, I can go on about it for ages. It really has a tendency to hinder combat and gunplay, though I will say on the bright side of combat, the best thing about the gameplay in Metal Gear Solid, hell, I'd say the best thing that the Metal Gear Solid franchise has to offer, the boss battles. Oh man, I could say that the boss battles in Metal Gear Solid range from memorable to iconic, my favorite of all of them being your fight with Psycho Mantis, a next-gen soldier who dons a gas mask and uses his psychic powers to obtain the upper hand in combat. Some of course will say it's a gimmicky boss battle. He reads into your console's memory card to get in your head, man.
I can see into your mind. You enjoy role-playing games. I see that you enjoy Konami games. You have not said often. You are somewhat reckless.
Now listen here, you fucking floating imbecile. I swear to God, if you touch my save file of Cars 3 Driven to Win, I'm gonna come over there and I am gonna absolutely beat you to kingdom oh, fuck, god damn it. I accidentally unplugged the controller. Just give me 1 second. Alright, there we go. We should be good now.
No! It cannot be! No!
Kojima-san, you magnificent son of a bitch. I gotta tell you, the first time you discover that in order to beat a boss, you have to unplug your controller and plug it back into the second port, your mind is blown to hell. Never in a million years would I have imagined that a developer would program in something like this for a boss battle, because I don't know how many of you felt this way, but Psycho Mantis scared the shit out of me. At this point in the game, he's got your girl Meryl. He's in her head and he's using her as a shield, and all you need to do is unplug the damn controller? You know, really, I should also consider the fact that the same guy who made this video game also wanted to make his floppy disks for Snatcher smell like the stench of a murder scene, which, in all honesty, now thinking about it, makes me wonder what he's going to do with the Blu-ray disc for Death Stranding. Make it smell like the ocean, decaying flesh, a newborn baby covered in Norman Reedus' cologne. Again, my statement still stands. Kojima, you magnificent son of a bitch! Metal Gear Solid's story, like I said before, is told through either a series of cutscenes or codec dialogue. It does feel a little like an animated movie rather than a video game, not to say that it doesn't tell the story well, but like, it can feel tedious. You move into a room or two, cutscene. You beat up a guy, cutscene, so on and so forth. It is something that later games managed to fix, but it still has a tendency to linger in others. On a much more positive note though, the game's in-engine cutscenes look really good, especially for PS1 graphics. The art direction really has some depth to it. What's fascinating though about the graphics of MGS is the world you're placed in. The surroundings of Shadow Moses itself give off this stark, cold feeling, like, not just because of the blue tints or the ice or the snow surrounding you, it's just the little things you see as you're playing. The sight of Snake's breath, for example, in the cold. It's something realistic that you can kind of pick up on, but you wouldn't expect that great of a detail in a PlayStation 1 game. There's a certain charm to it. The other part that really sticks out, one of my favorite things about Metal Gear Solid's presentation is the sound design. I'd argue a good portion of the sound design, from the soundtrack to the voice acting, is so ridiculously memorable. Did you know that 5 in-house composers actually worked on the soundtrack to Metal Gear Solid? I would not have thought that a game like this would require a 5-person team to score it. Now, there are 2 types of music that play throughout the game. You have your gameplay segment, which consists of more synthy action music, and your cutscenes, which is more orchestral. I think my favorite out of all the songs in the soundtrack, though, would be The Best Is Yet to Come. It's the ending song for the game. It's oddly serene for a game about trying to de-escalate the tensions of a nuclear threat. I think aside from the game's theme, it's one of the more memorable songs in the soundtrack. Now, as I said before, the music isn't all the sound design has to offer. Aside from producing that one alert noise that has stood the test of time for gamers worldwide, the voice acting of Metal Gear Solid is fucking iconic. I don't care what you have to say, David Hayter as Solid Snake, that gritty tone he uses, will go down as one of the most memorable voice acting performances in video game history. So much so that you can't not imitate it once you've heard it.
A strong man doesn't need to read the future. He makes his own.
Unfortunately, killing is one of those things that gets easier the more you do it. But in all honesty, David Hayter is and was the perfect person to play Solid Snake. Second favorite, of course, has to go to Patrick Lane Zimmerman for his performance as Revolver Ocelot. He is the physical embodiment of the spaghetti western outlaw. That southern drawl he uses to his advantage allowed him to chew every fiber of scenery that was developed for him. Look at the introductory monologue that he gives when he explains how his gun is the bestest gun to ever gun.
Code Single Action Army.
I'll say it before and I'll say it again. The characters are what truly drives the story of this game. This mad, strange, insane, anti-war, genetically super-soldiered, weird, beautifully, masterfully done game. If you've never played Metal Gear Solid for the PlayStation 1, I would highly suggest going in blind. You don't just play Metal Gear Solid, you experience it. So that's Metal Gear Solid 1, Hideo Kojima's introduction to a world of genetically altered super soldiers, tactical espionage action, and one retired Foxhound agent about to dive deep into a rabbit hole like none other before. And I'm glad you guys are here with me to enjoy this, so thank you very much. With that said, I'm gonna go now. If you like this video, let me know what you think below. With that said, this is John saying good night and goodbye. Hey guys, what's going on? John here. Just wanted to go ahead and take the time to shout out the patrons that made this video possible, all of which can be seen on the screen right next to me. If you guys want that shout out, you can go ahead and pledge on patreon.com/johnpage. Link is right below in the description. You could totally do that. Every little bit counts, obviously, whether it be 1, 5, 10, 20, 50, any of that stuff really counts. So I appreciate any kind of pledge that you guys put in, because it really does help me out when it comes to making videos and stuff like that. Anyway, with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This is John, signing off. Have a good one.